Hey y'all, Val here, and I am known for doing and persevering through the dumbest of challenges. Hopefully. And I was curious, could I beat The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild without ever being spotted by enemies? Let me go over the rules. Rule 1. What counts as being seen? Glad you asked. If any enemy gets an exclamation point above their head, that's being spotted. However, not every enemy works like that, like the Yiga clan. So anytime battle music starts, I must return to the last checkpoint or one further back if needed. Rule 2. I will have to calm all 4 divine beasts, as it's far more interesting and it stops me from going straight to the final boss and calling the challenge done. Rule 3. Story bosses do not count as being seen, as they are mandatory, no matter if you do the divine beasts or not, and since I am doing them, it is completely unavoidable to not be seen by the blights. Rule 4. Fast travel is acceptable. However, this does not mean things will be easy. Obviously, I need to go out of my way to get to that location first before the fast travel is even available. And Rule 5. I will not be using any glitches, I won't use masks either, and I won't use ancient arrows, and with those rules set in stone, accompany me now on my 9-hour and 14-minute journey of beating The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild without being seen. After waking up from our coma, Link collects the Sheikah Slate, 2 useless pieces of clothing, but we still equip them so he's not naked, and finally make our way to the iconic intro over the vast lands we will somehow have to traverse without any enemies knowing we are awake and ready to calm the 4 divine beasts. Now it's time for the challenge to actually begin, collecting our first and not so trusty weapon, as well as any and all collectibles with the goal of making our way to Kakariko Village to buy the stealth set ASAP. But not even 5 minutes later, I encountered what might be the most annoying enemy for this challenge, choo-choos. They have 2 ways of spawning, from trees or from the ground, and while they do have set spawns, it will always seem random. So I must live and learn from every choo-choo spawn in order to avoid them. And the reset put me back to the very beginning, making me learn the hard way that I should make sure to save whenever possible. Also, whistling is a double-edged sword. It allows Link to see through walls where enemies are with a little question mark. However, it may lead me to being discovered, so I must use it tactically to succeed. I continue to try to gather as much as I can, as well as break these pots by crouching into them in order to break them as sneakily as possible, and even unlock my first bow. A very useful tool for remaining unseen for the rest of the run. Taking the long way allows me to guide Link all the way to the tower without encountering any monsters. Then after activation, have my first death due to being unintelligent. This will probably be the only way I die outside of bosses because I doubt I'll be fighting many enemies this run. Finally at the bottom, this old man shows up to tell me to totally believe him that he'll let me fly if I grab 4 random orbs. Tell me no more, we have a deal, old guy. Getting to the Oman Al Shrine, I doubt I said that right, was quite literally as free as just walking. Isn't that great? Inside, however, after unlocking Magnesis, we get a new challenge, Guardian Scouts. You can't see it, but it's on the other side of this wall ready to ambush as soon as it knows we are here. Oh, there it is. Now you can see it. I needed to figure out a plan on how to deal with it, though that was easy. With the first orb collected, I needed to figure out just which shrine to do next, and this old man is back to yapping about our deal. Man, please just let me move on. I get I'm probably the only other human you've ever seen, but please just let me leave. I opted to go for bombs, as I can use them to both deal damage as well as distract enemies for the low price of a 6-second cooldown, but made sure to gather some wood for the future in order to make traversal as painless as it can, even though it will still be a pain. At this point, I wanted some monster parts, so I could make some elixirs with any critters I caught. However, as you can see, the second boulder just missed the second guy. Well, shucks. Anyways, before even attempting to unlock bombs, you can see it's getting a little late, so I opt to rest at the campfire with the old man, allowing me to continue under the light of the sun. Now, some of you might be asking, what's wrong with nighttime? Wouldn't the enemies be asleep? Yes, but actually no, as then Keys spawn, as well as skeletal monsters, both of which show up at random like choo-choos, so I'd rather not have to deal with them at all. So with the light of the sun shining on me, I climb and sneak all the way to the old man's house in order to start cooking up some meals, one for cold resistance and one for speed, which I kid you not, I never ended up eating. For the bomb shrine, I knew about the guardian here that tries to jump scare you with their death lasers, so I opted to go around, and there's one here too. Never knew that. So this time I went and once again just climbed around, putting Link at risk of falling to his death once again. But it was worth the risk, unlocking the Jabej shrine. I really don't know how to say these. And inside we unlock bombs, one of the more useful abilities for this challenge. Due to there being 0 Guardian Scouts, this shrine is completed in a jiffy, unlocking the second orb for the old man. The next shrine I decided to go for was the one on the side of the mountain, and even though it's easier to access after completing the snow shrine, I decided to challenge myself by getting it first, so I once again rest until morning before departing. The reason I consider it more of a challenge is, after cutting down the tree to get across, there are 2 bokoblins roaming around chasing butterflies, both of which could look in my direction and spot me at any moment. But, like a weed naturally, as a matter of course, I was able to scale the mountain and unlock the Owadiam Shrine, and inside, unlock Stasis. Again, with no enemies inside, we can finish in a flash compared to the final shrine, unlocking the 3rd of the 4 orbs for the elderly man. For the final shrine, this one was by far the easiest to make our way to, as I was lucky enough to walk a path perfectly to avoid any and all monsters ready to fight the Link himself, leading to the Kenamut shrine, I think? However, inside, this is the only shrine of the 4 with an actual challenge, as after unlocking Cryonis, things go south quickly. A Guardian Scout facing our way in. I wish I could have said I got it on my first attempt, or my second, or even my 3rd, but no, it was my 8th attempt where I got lucky where it was facing the left instead. Very slowly snuck around it, went up the ramp, and finally, I was able to collect all 4 of the old man's spheres he asked for. Speaking of old man, he's here again. Man, I wish you could just disappear and leave me alone. Wait, I was joking? Wait, what happened to our deal? Retracing my steps to the Stasis Shrine was actually way easier than expected, but as you can see, it's getting a little late in the day, so I went to rest at the old man's house and... where's the fire? Well, this is gonna be a problem. I don't have flint either, so I can't build my own. So I just go straight for the paraglider, being the best form to move silently, finally completing the Great Plateau. But it's not quite over. As it is prime nighttime for monster time, I needed a place to rest. But first, I unlocked my one and only stamina upgrade, as I decided that the best way to not worry about shrines is to just only unlock them. So I did not do a single other shrine after this point. After teleporting to the Plateau Tower, instead of immediately leaving and just hoping for the best with nighttime monster spawns, I spot a small Boko camp with a blazing fire, perfect for resting, so I snipe their watchmen and wait for each of them to fall asleep. I equip my strongest weapon and defeat all of them in their sleep, all 3 going down in one hit. Now I can safely rest knowing all 3 of those Bokos most likely did nothing wrong, but I needed a fire, so it had to be done. After 1 hour and 20 minutes, I finally completed the Great Plateau without being seen. Now it's time for... yes, getting to the village is getting its own dedicated chapter. Any and all traversal will have to be done highly unconventionally in order to maximize stealthiness, as well as I wanted to get the stealth gear as soon as possible, being vital to making traversal as painless as it can get. After finally getting the Kingdom of Hyrule splash text, it's time for this challenge to truly begin with its massive and free open map. This was actually going surprisingly smooth, but you can see I'm saving every couple of feet as if I was doing some sort of stupid challenge. Wait a minute. But you'll see exactly why I save so often right about now. Choo-Choo, I hate you. This is one of the probably 20 resets due to specifically Choo-Choo's. He will be a reoccurring antagonist for this run, but now is not the time for that. I steal this guy's axe, as well as his fire, walk about 30 or so feet, and... so this time I tried to swim, which didn't go swimmingly, as at this rock there is a very conveniently placed Boko and no cover for me to take when he looks this way, forcing me to restart. I tried to swim around, but okay, this time I was able to sneak underneath where it stood, saving the game once again, and then sneaking my way to these boxes to get some more time in waiting for it to look away. I really wanted to get this tower for some reason, even though I didn't get the rest. Maybe because it was on the way, but it took way longer than it should have. But eventually, I was able to ascend up it, unlocking the local shrines in your area ready for activation alarm. That is more annoying than they probably thought it would be, but still useful for setting up fast travel points. The path I chose was interesting. Instead of going between the dueling peaks like the game wants to with all the Lizalfos, I chose to go over the mountain instead, and with only one stamina upgrade, I had to be pretty tactical with where and when I chose to climb. Going exactly as I hoped, smooth with no enemies up until I went to pick up this mushroom. Choo-choo, please! This time I went around and there's an Octorok. Weirdly enough though, Octorok spawns are random, as after resetting, this one was just gone despite not being defeated, so whenever I encounter one, I reset, which disposes of them with no problem. But due to my genius planning and massive brain, at the top I can simply glide my way down the Kakariko Bridge, talk to Hestu to start, but not quite do his quest yet, and finally, I made it to Kakariko Village without an enemy spotting me. This is the path I took. I'll show you after every major area. However, the lack of map won't help with reading this, but it'll help you get an idea of how I went about things. After selling everything I deemed sell-worthy, I can only purchase one piece of armor. However, one is still better than none, so I can't complain. I activate the shrine for fast travel purposes, then purposefully rest tonight. What am I, stupid? No actually, as now I can grab some sneaky river snails and sunset fireflies. I was gonna hunt this bloopy for some rupees, but I felt bad, so I just let it go free. Grab some fairies, as well as some more stealth related crops, allowing me to cook up a great deal of stealthy foods. Talking to Impa goes as well as you'd hope for talking to a 100-year-old lady after sleeping for 100 years after almost dying. She called me stupid for forgetting what happened 100 years ago, ouch, then tasked me for putting the 4 divine beasts to rest. Now this is where things truly actually start, as the first divine beast I decided to conquer was... yes, the furthest divine beast, but I already planned out the order I wanted to go about them in my head. This being the first due to the rather magnificent ability required after its defeat, which would make the rest of traversal 3 times easier than without it. If you know, you know. But first, Hestu, sorry for ignoring your request, I will now bomb these bokos off the nearby cliff in order to collect and return your maracas. However, I didn't grab enough seeds so I could only expand 1 slot, so I chose bow. Also, before anyone points this out, yes, I know this is a Yiga clan member in disguise. I am not counting this as being seen. As the rules I set, no battle music started, so we are safe for now. Once again, these paths I take will be as unconventional as possible. The more out of the way, the better, unless it's on flat ground, because then, guess what? Choo-choo butt. Great. So after more wandering, I encountered a guardian. Even greater. But then a thought crossed my mind. I can just fast travel to the Great Plateau and save so much time. Maybe I am stupid. Alright, so raise your hands if you want a walking and gliding montage. Oh, nobody raised their hands. You know I can see you through the screen, right? Well, too bad, you're gonna get one anyways, and you will complain about it in the comments. At the Tabantha Bridge stable, I meet Torin, a very kind fellow giving me 500 rupees to give to the Great Fairy. But that doesn't mean I need to use it for that, so I return to Kakariko Village and buy the second piece of stealth instead. Sorry man, but I have priorities. Returning to the task at hand, getting to Rito Village from here was almost, and I mean almost, smooth sailing, as I was completely free from enemies up until right here. I started gliding, and an Octorok decided to make itself known and start shooting shots. I reset before it could hit me, obviously. I decided to go a different route among the trees like a true ninja, and it was going fantastic for a few minutes up until I missed the jump and choo-choo. But the trees seemed promising, so I took them again. Heard an Octorok, but clearly it didn't see me as it never took a shot, and finally made it to Rito's stable. And from here, cross the bridges, and we are introduced to Va Meadow, our first divine beast. I grabbed the shrine, and now it's time to get to work. Here's the path I took, by the way. Not very easy to read, but it got the job done, letting me reach Rito Village without having been seen by a singular enemy. Again, sorry for the lack of actual map, but I won't be getting a single one for the rest of the challenge, for my own time's sake. The village elder informs me of a very talented archer, Teba. So I chat with his wife before having hallucinatory flashbacks about a completely different bird I must have known 100 years ago. But who cares, honestly? I hope this challenge is as interesting as it is to watch as it was to record, because man, some parts later get rough. Since I'm clearly too poor to afford any of the tourist clothing here, I instead cook up some more cold-resistant food before setting off in search for Teba, who lives within view distance. Shouldn't be too bad, right? I wanted to bash my head into a brick wall. Despite Teba living basically a good 100 feet away from Rito Village, there's one teeny tiny problem. Horse-backed bokoblins. Wait, that makes it sound like they have horses on their backs. Bokos on horses. And for some reason, when on them, their view distance is substantially increased to the point to where hiding is pointless. I literally got save file locked and had to go back 2 saves just to retry. Look at this. How did they see me? After going back 2 saves, I just went a significantly weirder route around in order to finally make it to Teba. Proved I know how a bow works, and we set off to calm down Va Meadow. After giving Va Meadow 4 big booms, we finally enter our first divine beast. We hear some strange voices in our head and set off. However, there are 2 issues here. Guardian Scouts, as well as Malice Eyes, which will both be needed to taken out stealthily in order to not be seen. Honestly, there was only 1 divine beast that caused some trouble, and it wasn't even from the Scouts or the Eyes, so I'll try to make them as short as possible. After sniping that eye, snipe another, as well as the Scout, grab the terminal, another eye,
Nice shot.
the first terminal, snipe another eye and fall to your demise. Second terminal, another eye. However, use a bomb arrow to hit this one due to being out of reach. Third terminal, fourth terminal, and after the 5th and last terminal, snipe 2 more eyes just to be safe from their gaze. Then I grabbed the giant ancient core from the chest from its nose, then started the Wind Blight Ganon fight, and due to bosses not counting, 1 short fight with me failing the fight correctly later, Wind Blight is down.
Bye-bye.
Collect the heart container, and we have successfully completed our first divine beast, Va Meadow, without being seen by a single enemy. And then get Spirit Bomb to unlock Revali's Gale, the most powerful and useful skill for this whole entire challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever, I will be using the champion's weapons and will not just store them in my house. This feels so wrong, but it must be done. After resting till morning, we set off to our second divine beast, that being a rather peculiar order for doing the divine beasts, I know. But after Va Meadow, the order of the second and third just doesn't really matter, as neither of their abilities are nearly as useful, as well as the 4th is last, that being Va Naboris, as once completed, unleashes the wrath of the Yiga clan, which would basically be a second Choo-Choo enemy. If you are to try this challenge yourself, I'd actually recommend doing Va Rudania 3rd instead of 2nd. You'll know exactly why in due time, but since when have I ever turned down a challenge? Once at Rito's stable, I once again rested till morning. To maximize my time, I am able to travel, and the start wasn't too shabby until I landed on a tree, and apparently the wolves can still detect you when I'm here. Yes, I'm counting wolves because it plays battle music. After the reset, I was able to guide Link all the way to the sledge where Choo-Choo, to absolutely nobody's surprise, became an issue once again. After walking the perimeter, I once again saved, and I'm glad I did, because not even 10 feet later... Yeah, great. I tried going around them, however it just leads to another Choo-Choo spawn. I went even further, and yeah, this sucks. But believe it or not, this is not even close enough to the worst part of this run. So this time I just climbed around the cliff because, they can't spawn where they can't spawn. I know, isn't that insane? Allowing me to get to a small checkpoint at the nearby Serene stable. This is where Revali's Gale prove how useful it is, even though it was not even used to its fullest potential. I can skip large groups of ground and hope I land where Choo-Choo isn't. However, I can only use it 3 times before it needs to recharge, which, isn't the best, but it's still far better than nothing. Now, after landing on this shaky shack, things get a little unstable, for this spot at least, as let me remind you, Choo-Choo are set to spawn literally everywhere and there is no way to know in advance other than through trial and error. After those 3 flukes, I used the technique I will call wall running. A little misleading, but going along the side of any type of slope without any flat bits basically guarantees safety with traveling without the risk of a Choo-Choo or any enemies in general, getting me so close to Goron Village, but as you know, it's a little hot there, and of course, would you look at that, fire keys, it's getting late. I need to rest, but you can light a fire with the heat from Death Mountain. So I did just that, rested, and boom, it's morning. Now, as for getting to Goron Village, well, have you ever heard of just locking in and running? Well, neither did I, because I also got hit by a meteor rock thing when trying to not die to fire damage, but due to being prepared with an abundance of food, I was able to run enough to trigger the Vah Rudania cutscene. Thankfully, this postponed my fiery fate, same with talking to this Goron, as well as this one, and finally at the store, I was able to shock this one Goron before selling enough to finally buy some fire-resistant gear. Now I won't burn! Yippee! Here's the path I took, by the way. Yes, I know it's still not helpful without the map, but at least I'm showing you. Or maybe you don't care. That's entirely possible too, but I care enough to show you, so take it whether you like it or not. I also bought the boots for later, as things get really hot the deeper we go, but now, after all that, we can finally start the Divine Beast quest to calm Vah Rudania. Also, yes, I got the shrine. Anyways, we talked to my dad, Bluto, with the same old cranky attitude and back issues, tasking me to find his stepson he doesn't care about who got lost within the old lava mine. So there I must go to retrieve him. And here's where I used my biggest brain, as the mines have many watchmen Lizalfos ready to rain arrows down on me. But by standing on this rock, like I said, standing on this rock, I can use Revali's Gale to get past nearly all of them and land where I cannot be seen. Then one more can get me to the land where the cave is, and one final to make my way atop. Open up the cave with the boss's bombs, allowing me to easily save Yonobo. To make things a little easier on my side, I fast travel back to Goron City instead of going back the way I came, as well that just won't do. Report back to Dad, in which he gives me some of his beer as a reward, but tells me he once again got lost and does not care enough to look, tasking me once again with finding him. Also, look how lucky I got with these 2 ores, I'll just let it play out. The intended path to Yonobo is scattered with mobs, so I climb my way about the walls to get around them, finding out the hard way that there are fire keys, putting me back like 2 feet, so honestly I don't really care. This is the only reset needed to get there, but as you can see, Yonobo is in a bit of a tight situation. As you know, Death Mountain is hot, and I mean hot, and the only bows I have are all wooden bows. I can't equip them for long, but before we get to that point, how to deal with 2 black moblins. I tried freezing like an idiot, forgetting it's, well, hot, and then tried to sneak up, but unfortunately both can see behind each other, making that not a viable option. I had to think about this from a whole new perspective, so I climbed this rock. I was at this encounter for nearly 30 minutes, so I'll just save you the time by just going over the successfully unseen attempt. I start by luring one away with bombs and just bombing him all the way until he has around half health left. Finally equip the bow and shoot some careful shots before finishing him off with a bomb. For the second, I opted to just start with arrows, taking a good chunk out, and when I felt like it was enough, snuck down to finish him off with a sneak strike. Finally beating this part, it took so long it's actually nighttime, so I set up a fire so I could skip the daytime. Okay, maybe it's not a good time to rest. All I can hope is no keys spawn during this encounter, and thankfully they don't! This encounter is meant to be stealth anyways, up until the second cannon, which has a lone black moblin. However, apparently my weapon is strong enough to where after doing a sneak strike, 2 more hits and he's down without ever getting a glimpse at me. The third cannon is like the tutorial one, 2 black moblins. However, I can use metal boxes and I dropped it all the way down. Okay, let me try again, and I lost that one as well. So I very carefully bring the last one over, drop it on one of their heads, taking it out in one shot. However, the second survived my box ambush, but a simple sneak strike was enough to finish it off. Aboard Rudania, it is yet another pretty easy divine beast. I start by hearing some voices and make my way outside instead of inside to take out a Malice Eye in advance, then finally enter the beast, turning the place pitch black, but hey, Malice and Scouts glow, so taking them out is pretty simple, sniping each and every one of them to not get noticed by any of them. Finally unlock the map, and now we can really start. First terminal is easy, same goes for the second. And the third. Snipe another eye, grab the fourth, don't realize there's a cursed moblin skull, get seen by said cursed moblin skull, then get the 5th one correctly without being seen. Now all that's left is to take down Fireblight Ganon, and while I did struggle for some reason, came out on top by just the skin of my teeth. Like, I was surprised I ended up surviving, but with that, we collect the heart container, finally calm Vah Rudania, and get Daruk's protection. Return the Goron village, and complete the quest. Now time for the next divine beast. So this is the first divine beast the game suggests you take down, and I 100% see why. I kid you not, after fast traveling to Kakariko village to buy the last stealth armor piece, completing the set, I was able to travel all the way to Zoro's domain without a single hiccup. Okay, well I lied, there was one, but without a single hiccup regarding enemies. As after I landed on this rock, and I'm not sure why I did, it's raining, I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to land on an isolated rock, but all I had to do was just wait patiently for Revali to get back and ready for action before making my way to Zoro's domain without encountering a single enemy. While resting to morning, I encountered my first and only blood moon, reviving maybe like 10 enemies total. Great job, Ganon, you're really making a difference with this one. Due to skipping all of Sidon's encounters, we get a unique dialogue where he doesn't recognize us, obviously, but as soon as he learns where Hylian goes from enemies to allies, after a short conversation with King Neptune and some side shenanigans, we are tasked with the task perfect for this challenge, collecting shock arrows from the Lionel without being seen. Oh yeah, here's the path I took, by the way. Again, I know it doesn't help, but taking this path allowed me to not encounter a single enemy. I steal from the elderly, and since he didn't like it, unleash our inner Beyblade on him before swimming all the way up each waterfall, and here we meet the most formidable foe for this game, the Lionel. And something interesting about them, even in full stealth gear, they can still hear you walking unlike any other enemy. You'll see later, but as soon as the cutscene ended, I somehow got spotted. I don't know how, but the battle music started, so I just reset. As you can see, the Lionel still somehow can hear me despite having full stealth gear, so I must be extra sneaky in order to collect all 20 of the required shock arrows that allows us to challenge the divine beast Vah Ruta. But as you can see, after the small hiccup at the start, collecting the rest was relatively easy. My first thought was just, I'll fast travel back to Zoro's domain, but that would be a waste of time, as Sidon is already ready to meet us at the beast. So I once again call Revali to action to glide my way all the way there, all the way to the wrong dock. Wait, what am I doing? So I use the final of Revali's Gales I have available to make my way to Sidon, finally starting the battle. Vah Ruta's fight poses absolutely no threat to the challenge of not being seen, as all I have to do is deal with the ice with Cryonis, dash up the waterfall, and take out each of the 4 phosphorescent pink points. I know, big words I didn't even use correctly, allowing us to enter the Divine Beast. We hear the soothing voice of Mipha's ghost, spooky, and I 100% see why this is the recommended one to do first, as it is by far the easiest divine beast to complete once aboard. This eye, to nobody's surprise, is easy to snipe, and surprisingly it didn't see me and aggro to me. Same with the Oblivious Scout, and one last eye to allow us to unlock the map of the divine beast. Allow me once again to speedrun what to do with this divine beast without being seen. Activate the first terminal, get spotted by a hidden scout, distract said scout in order to take it out very unconventionally compared to the last, activate the second terminal, activate the third, use Revali's Gale to get yourself above where the scout is in order to take it out from above, activate the fourth terminal, and finally get burnt to a crisp seconds before the fire goes out before finally activating the fifth and final terminal. Only one thing remains: challenge Waterblight Ganon, and after a rather underwhelming fight, defeat Waterblight, collect the heart container, and now we can finally put Vah Ruta to rest, as well as reunite with the champion Mipha, promising to heal us whenever needed through Mipha's grace, which is more useful than you might think because I don't have any more fairies. Returning to Zora's domain, we are congratulated for our triumphant efforts and are rewarded with Mipha's spear, the Light Scale Trident. Oh crap, I forgot to grab the Rooks. Give me 1 second. There we go. Now we have the Boulder Breaker too. Now there's only one divine beast left, that being... Finally, only one more divine beast. Sure hope this isn't the hardest one to complete. I start with traveling back to the Great Plateau, as Kanamut Shrine is the closest to where my current destination is, before finally setting off to Gerudo Desert. Funnily enough, Gerudo Desert has the most anti-monster traversal available, with many paths that are man-made along the side of canyon walls, allowing me to very easily make my way all the way to the Gerudo Canyon Stable pit stop to plan ahead. After resting till morning, it's off to the races to cross the desert before the heat of the sun cooks us. However, I go at a walking pace to not alert any nearby hidden Lizalfos in the sand, as they work like choo-choo here, but with my insane luck, I was able to make it all the way to the Naboris Trigger, and after a cutscene of what is my favorite divine beast to fight, enter Karakara Bazaar. One more rest till morning, and I was off, inching my way across the vast desert, saving every couple of feet to ensure my safety, and after finally making it, activate the necessary NPC quest, as well as the shrine, and now we must trek all the way back to the bazaar in order to acquire the necessary garbs to enter Gerudo Town, in which I was able to successfully retrace my steps to make it back monster-free. I finally talked to Beetle for the very first time in order to sell him some of my precious jewels, to the point to where I have 600 rupees to acquire the goods needed to enter. Climb the Bizarre Bazaar building, where I meet a very kind woman willing to sell me some spare garbs in order to go undercover to sneak past the guards in Gerudo Town so I can complete the quest of calming the divine beast. How nice of her to do. After fast traveling back to the acquired shrine, Link is allowed Forbidden City entry. Here's the path I took in order to make it to Gerudo Desert, Karakara Bazaar, and Gerudo Town without encountering a singular enemy. Inside the chief's chamber, we meet Riju, the current Gerudo chief, and due to her being smart, immediately sniffs out that we are, in fact, not a woman, due to having the Sheikah Slate at our hip, meaning we are Link. But she doesn't throw us out, as she knows we can help with the calming of Vah Naboris. But to prove to her that we are the realest of real deal, tasks us with retrieving the Thunder Helm from the Yiga clan, a necessary item to calming Naboris. So, once again, early in the morning, we depart and search for the Yiga hideout. Surprisingly, I was able to get extremely far without encountering a single enemy on my path there. I must have gotten really lucky. That was up until the stupid wolf spotted me. After the reset, I again got really far, all the way until... Oh, brother. I feared this would happen, so I go back the way I came in order to get to even higher ground. Got seen by more wolves, great. And so, after another reset, use Revali's Gale to skip over top them before making myself as close to the entrance as I can with one more gale. And... I made it inside the base without any of them spawning. Fantastic! Inside the Yiga clan hideout, we encounter a mandatory stealth section. Well, it's not mandatory, you could always fight them, but it's not the intended way. But just because I have stealth gear doesn't mean I can do it on my first try. Or my second try. But you know what they say, third time's the charm. Finally making my way through and to the Master Koga fight. Remember, bosses do not count, as they are mandatory to defeat the divine beasts. This one being the only non-Ganon boss anyways, and with using his own stupidity against him, we are able to conquer the Yiga clan hideout without being seen. With the Thunder Helm in our inventory, I can fast travel back to Gerudo Town just because I can. Oh yeah, this one's less important, but once again, here's the path I ended up taking to go unseen. Returning the helm to Riju, turns out it's just a tad big for her head, and to the point to where it falls over. Let's hope that won't be an issue with the Divine Beast fight itself. Like, imagine it just falls off and we're both doomed to Noboris' wrath. That wouldn't be very good. Unfortunately, I encountered my first Choo-Choo-styled Lizalfos on my way to the outpost. What a pain. However, this is the one and only one encountered throughout the entire playthrough, so after the reset, I was clear to make my way to the outpost. Finally, we are ready to fight the Divine Beast Va Naborist, and I forgot to have a shield equipped. Great start, Link. This gives me so much confidence we'll come out alive. Honestly, the Va Naborist fight is by far my favorite when it comes to Divine Beasts itself. It just feels so epic in comparison to the rest. Ruta is just ice cubes, Rudania is a stealth mission, and Meadow is a little drawn out and slow in my opinion. Naborist actually gets the intense feeling right when fighting something massive and unknown. And Riju failed me by not being close enough where I could make it to her in time, wasting Mipha's grace before the hardest fight in the game. This is gonna be fantastic. Aboard Naboris, we once again hear strange voices in our head before starting our final Divine Beast, with a scout looking right at us. However, it's not aggroed. Maybe it is blind. What an idiot. But not even 10 feet later, Houston, we have a problem. There is a Malice Eye that can detect us even though we are outside of its line of sight, meaning its proximity detection is screwing us. However, a simple bomb arrow is enough to take it out before it can even detect our presence. Now we can finally nab the map, so allow me to run it down how this Divine Beast went. Snipe this Malice Eye, activate the first terminal, defeat this scout from a distance, activate the second terminal, as well as the third, take out this scout without it looking at you, this Malice Eye, activate the fourth terminal, another Malice Eye just for comfort, then take out the last two Guardian Scouts from a distance to not draw their attention. And finally, skip this entire puzzle by just galing over top. Activate the fifth and final terminal, and now it is on to the Thunderblight Ganon fight. Not going to lie, I kinda suck at this game's combat despite how simple it is, dying a many deaths, a few too many, before finally being able to conquer the beast known as Thunderblight. Grab the heart container that makes you fall off the ledge, and finally put Va Naborist to rest. Unlock what is typically my favorite in the game, Urbos' Fury, both for its style and damage points, and report back to the chief that we have now finished the task, rewarding us with the Scimitar of the Seven as well as the Daybreak Shield. Now, after all of this, one task remains. I return to where we started for dramatic effect. However, Zelda has come to make an announcement. The Champions Ballad DLC is now available for Link to attempt. So, if you're still here and want me to attempt this without being seen as well, like and subscribe. Only 15% of you guys are subscribed anyways, so it would help a lot on my content creation journey. And let me know in the comments if you would find that interesting, or maybe even Tears of the Kingdom as well, and I will attempt those in the future. Once well rested, depart on our final journey to put an end to this absurd challenge, finding out if I can indeed beat The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild without being seen. You can see me clearly gliding high in the sky in the hopes of landing on the tower. However, the Watchman Boko somehow spotted me while I was above them. Let's hope this isn't foreshadowing on how dumb getting to the castle will be. Attempt 2, I go around and to this abandoned watchtower in order to maintain my height before finally going to the desired tower, and atop, arrow down some innocent Bokos just living their best life hunting. Sorry, but it had to be done. Now here is where the nightmare starts. So remember choo-choos? Every single direction I went had choo-choos. Every single direction. Okay, I don't care anymore. I'm starting in a new location, Va Meadow. It's both a slight bit closer as well as much more convenient for traversal, allowing me to cover much more distance before you'll once again never guess a stupid fat choo-choo spawning out of nowhere. Thankfully, there are only 3 other choo-choo incidents that stopped me from easily making my way to Hyrule Castle. But you know, it makes sense, it's the final area, so there must be some sort of challenge for me to conquer. But finally, after one more short jog, we are able to make our way into the waters of Hyrule Castle, triggering the cutscene, showing us just how close we are to beating this challenge once and for all. I had, quite literally, zero plan for going about Hyrule Castle, so I had to improvise as I went and hope for the best that the path taken would work. I started by climbing this dock before spotting a guardian, so I hopped back into the water and ended up at the docks. Sneak strike a Lizalfos, and then get spotted by some keys I didn't notice. On my third attempt, I made sure to snipe all three out of the sky, not being very easy to hit a tiny ball from such a distance, but I did, obviously. A few more paces forward and I unlocked the shrine for literally no reason, before finally moving the hidden bookshelf in order to make my way inside of the castle. However, I was spotted by Lizalfos almost immediately, forcing me to rethink and plan for occasions such as this. On my second attempt, I was almost successful in escaping this large room without being seen, but due to my ignorance, failed to jump and landed right in front of a Lizalfos, charging at me, but the last save wasn't that far back, so I just used a volley's gale to make the jump easier. Within this hallway lies a Lizalfos on watch, so after freezing it, using Urbosa's Fury to dispose of it before it can get up and realize it was Link who defeated it. And further down, there is yet another just chilling, ready to be defeated with a singular sneak strike. With a well-placed arrow, I was able to distract this moblin for long enough to where I snuck past, but being tempted by the promises of many powerful weapons, I hopped back down to sneak strike it to death. A short hallway later and I am at the dining hall, in which I was able to sneak through the middle without any of the four moblins noticing Link was even here, leading me to the outside of Hyrule Castle, littered with guardians ready to locate and bring Link to an end, but that won't do. So I start following this path with a dead guardian, running along it and avoiding the eye of the guardian Skywatcher. Then, as is my luck, Revali's Gale straight up to where a guardian is and be instantly noticed. The next attempt I went a little bit further until I found the decaying guardian, used his Gale at a slightly further spot, allowing me to climb up the side of the cliff until, finally, at the top, I was at the entrance of this sanctum, ready to bring this challenge to an end. Calamity Ganon. The final challenge to overcome. However, due to the power of friendship, the four calmed divine beasts were able to all fire their lasers into the castle, hugely aiding by reducing the Calamity's health in half before the fight even begins. Now it's just time for me to finish him off. After some very mediocre gameplay on my end and somehow not one, but two failed laser parries in a row, I was able to bring Ganon to his knees, and with one final phase, with the power of random horse number 47 and the bow of light gifted to us by Zelda, I can, in fact, beat the main content of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild without being seen by a singular enemy. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. Have a good day and a good night.